Did you ever feel like as a kid you were happier than you are now? Well, today I want to talk a bit about that and how you can reclaim some of that childlike happiness. Hey guys, welcome back to Tipharot, it's me Matt here, and today I want to talk about reclaiming your childlike happiness. So you may have noticed that as you've gotten older, you've started to enjoy life less and less. Those things that could keep you amused as a child, when you were a little kid, no longer keep you amused now. Life was so much easier back then because everything was enjoyable, everything was an adventure. And when you look back at it, you can't understand how you don't have that happiness now, the same level of happiness you had as a kid. And in my opinion, this is mostly due to one thing, and that is dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter involved in pleasure and our enjoyment that we get out of things. Now, dopamine is released in response to novelty. So as things lose novelty for us and become things that we do all of the time, they start to produce less of a pleasure response. But the other thing is, we're also desensitizing ourselves to pleasure in general, because when we release more and more dopamine in response to certain activities, eventually our brain decides that we're releasing too much dopamine, and so the receptors that dopamine can bind to produce its effects then go on to downregulate. What this means is that those receptors aren't available for the dopamine to bind to, so the dopamine becomes less effective. You can have a normal amount of dopamine in your brain, but it's not going to be as effective because you don't have as many receptors for it to bind to. Now, dopamine in itself is healthy, and experiencing happiness and so on is healthy, but there are some activities that cause massive releases of dopamine, which mean that your receptors will eventually downregulate over time, and as a result, over the years and months that you've been doing that thing, your enjoyment of life is going to decrease, and you're not going to feel like a kid anymore. So some of those things include excessive time spent watching TV or playing video games, porn, drugs and alcohol, gambling and so on. Now these aren't all of the things that can increase dopamine, but these are just a few common examples of things that a lot of us have in our lives. And the problem with these things isn't so much the thing in itself. If you play a little bit of a video game here and there, you're not causing your brain to rewire and you to have happiness problems in the future. But if you're playing, say, 4 or 5 hours every single day consistently over a period of years, then that is going to cause you problems because over time those receptors are going to downregulate. In general, technology has brought us so many of these instant dopamine fixes. We see it with how games are made these days. You get all these games on like Facebook and so on where literally all you're doing is just clicking something every now and then, and you're just getting points and level ups. And all those points and level ups feel to you like something new, like some novelty, so you get a bigger release of dopamine, which means that you get more addicted to the game, you get more drawn into it because that makes the game addictive if it has more of a dopamine hit to it. But as a result, you're also downregulating those receptors, desensitizing yourself to pleasure. So you're getting more and more hooked into the game and less enjoyment of life. Now obviously this is a long, slow process. You aren't going to suddenly become depressed because you've been playing too much Farmville or whatever. That's not how it works. But if you're doing several different things that overload your dopamine repeatedly over years and years, then your happiness overall is going to decrease. So by removing some of those influences from your life, you can restore normal dopamine functioning because your brain reacts to the conditions it's placed in. So if your brain is constantly releasing excess amounts of dopamine, it's going to downregulate the receptors to protect you from the effects of too much. But if it sees the opposite, that you're not getting as much dopamine as you were before, then it will go, okay, we can release these receptors, we can use these receptors again because there isn't an excess of dopamine now. So what do I suggest? Well, I suggest looking at your life and seeing, do you have any of these influences in your life? How big are these influences? Like, how much time are you investing in these things? And could you cut down on at least some of them? You don't necessarily have to cut all of these things out of your life. I'm not suggesting that you stop playing video games forever or stop watching TV forever or whatever. What I am suggesting is that you look at all of these things, that you accept that they do have this kind of influence on you if they're taken to excess, and that you moderate your use of any of these things responsibly, and also that if you do want to get a boost in happiness and you want to feel like a kid again, that you take some time off all of these things, just for a short period of time. You don't have to quit them forever or whatever, but just take a few weeks off everything. Take a few weeks where you don't use the computer, where you spend all of your time outside with friends and so on, and you will just be amazed at the difference it makes. And even when you come back to using your computer after that, as long as you do it in moderation and don't repeat the same old habits of taking everything to excess, then you're going to have more happiness and more enjoyment. So if you really want to be happy like a kid again, you have to be careful of all the influences you let into your life and ensure that none of them are in excess. So for me personally, I cut out TV a long time ago, although I do watch the occasional show or film. I've mostly cut out video games. I still play them from time to time. I am a bit of a gamer myself and I enjoy video games. I'll probably make more videos about that. In fact, I do have one that was either released before this or after this, I'm not sure because I'm about to record it, about video games and lucid dreaming. And I like video games. I'm probably never going to quit them completely, but I cut down massively. I used to be someone that spent hours and hours every day just gaming, playing MMOs and stuff like that. And aside from taking a toll on your social life and stuff like that, it does also affect your happiness in the long run if you're doing that kind of thing to excess. So I cut down on that as well. I of course removed drugs from my life. They were a part of my life. As I mentioned before, I've had addictions. I even removed the ones that I felt were overall safer and less dangerous and so on, simply because I felt like I didn't need that part of my life anymore and that overall the overall effect of it had been a bad influence on my life. I haven't drank alcohol from New Year's and I don't intend to for quite some time. I intend to only drink when it's a special occasion or whatever. I cut out porn over 6 months ago as well. I even try not to eat much junk food because that can often cause a dopamine response as well. And in addition to all of that, I also implemented meditation and other healthy habits that have helped me, improve my brain function and improve my overall mental well-being. And as a result of all of that combined, I can genuinely say that I feel so much happier now than I used to. I do have moments where I feel all of the happiness that I felt as a little kid in the summer holidays. You guys probably all remember that feeling when you were like, I can't even think how many years old, but when you had your first ever summer holidays at school and you had maybe like 6 weeks off. I don't know how long it is in the US, but in England we had like 6 weeks off in the summer. And during those 6 weeks, it felt like 6 weeks was forever. 6 weeks to me now doesn't feel like that long. I probably have about 6 weeks of my diet left that I'm doing currently. And to me that seems like no time at all, like that's going to be over really quickly, it's not very long. But back then with the summer holidays, when I knew I had 6 weeks, that felt like forever, that felt like I had so much time. And I was just so happy at the time to have that time for myself. And I didn't have that feeling for years after that. When I was a teenager, when I was a young adult, I didn't have that feeling. I was happy, I enjoyed my life most of the time, but I never felt that kind of overwhelming sense of well-being. But recently that feeling returned to me as I started to eliminate some of these influences from my life. And a lot of the time I have that. I'm even, starting to get it more and more these days because it is coming up to spring now and I love the warmer weather and, I love summer because it reminds me of those times. And just because of the fact that it's coming up to spring now, I'm already getting all excited and all happy like a kid again. And it just feels awesome. Like, I love my life. And the thing is, I'm not rich, I'm not, I don't have all of these things that a lot of people think are necessary to be happy. I am just happy with what I have and I'm happy to be alive and I'm happy inside myself. Like, it's an internal feeling, it's not dependent on my outside circumstances. So I believe you can feel that too. Just look at your life right now and look at what areas are you taking to excess and try to moderate some of that, try to cut some of that out. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, remember to subscribe up there for more, and if you want to keep watching, check out the video that's linked on screen. Thanks for watching once again guys, take care.